This conference will now be recorded.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and open the meeting, call it to order, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Caps, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ackerman.
Here.
Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. LaFever.
Here.
Mr. McKinnon.
Here.
Mrs. O'Rourke. Here.
All right, everybody, all the trustees are here in person, so we do have a quorum. Any conflict of interest in what we're talking about tonight? All right, if you find that you do have a conflict, please let me know as soon as you believe you do. And since this is a special board meeting, the only change I would say is maybe we want to take the items in reverse order, maybe talk about the water operator first and the director position. I don't know if that matters. In one sense, I don't know if we'd want to kind of look at who we might have as our operator first and then talk about the position. I don't know if it really matters. Okay. So we don't have anybody sign up for public comment today. We'll move on to the discussion items. And again, since it's special board, we can only talk about these two items. If anybody feels there's an item that we need to go into closed session, you are welcome to make a motion to go into executive or closed session for that particular reason. And then if voted upon to do so, then we can do so. If you don't feel that anything needs to be in executive session tonight, then we don't have to go into executive session. Let's talk about the Public Works Director position. So we have that position that'll be vacant and need to determine, are we looking at filling basically that same position again? Are we looking at filling it in a different way? How are we going to kind of fill that position in the interim? And that's kind of what part B is about, is the interim water operator. But overall, the Public Works Director position is much more than just the water operation. It's overseeing the street. I mean, Jimmy is our superintendent of streets and fleets, and I'll be talking with Jimmy sometime, probably, you're gonna be gone this week,
Right.
but you'll be back next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be back Thursday.
Okay, so either later this week or next week, we'll get together and talk about the streets. I talked to Seth Gronwald from Fairgrand just before getting here. He's at a 7 o'clock board meeting in person, and I think it's Pengree Grove or whatever that is. And he thought he'd be able to call in, but he thought we were having a regular 6 o'clock time frame, not 7. So he wanted to let me know that they're able to cover whatever we need to have them cover, both streets, water, and anything else. So the first thing is, if we're looking at just finding a person to assume the same duties as Chad has right now, that's fine. We can go out and look for someone to do that, first on an interim basis, but then on a permanent basis. And we need to advertise for that. So I think in your package you have something from Gov HR, and it is a place where you can place an ad. I don't know if it's something that we want to expend the funds for or not to advertise there, and I apologize. I thought I had it in my own packet, but I don't see it here.
Is that the 30-day listing for $100?
Yeah.
Now, unless it's something else on the next email, it said for $399.
That's AWA.
Okay, so two total, okay, that makes much more sense.
So I was able to find it. So the GovHR USA is that 30-day single job posting for $100. I don't know, Kelly or Chad, if you know the reach of that. Is that something that might be something that's a water operator, a public works director person in the area would be looking at?
HR specializes mostly in the interim. They typically seek out and have a dossier of retirees or recent retirees. And they're looking at, for people typically that have just exited to fill in a short term. But they do interviewing and they do have the ability, but not a lot of people in the smaller sector know about them. This is kind of mid-range here with the village of Winnebago. They're typically advertising for a little bit larger communities and larger metropolitan areas, but they do exist, they do do it. AWWA, I know, was, especially since the village is not a member, is gonna be more expensive, and AWWA is more catered toward the water sector people. APWA exists, I know I can forward that to you, but that one has about that same price point. I would assume they're gonna be $400 to $500 for their, outreach, and that one, as you are aware, Frank, City of Marengo's been on it. They've actually been on it for years and years and years because they have trouble keeping the DPW over there because they have a tough situation that their departments are all kind of separate.
Okay.
So when the DPW comes in, his hands are tied. But the position was advertised locally when I took it, and there would probably be no harm going there. No harm going anywhere. It's just how much time and dollars you want to invest.
My thought process is we have an option for an interim operator. And if we go with an interim operator, then we have to coincide with how long that operator would be willing to do this and what we're trying to seek in return. Are we trying to seek out, an Apple person to fill the Apple spot, or are we trying to get two people to fill one spot, and break it down? That's kind of what we have to decide. So we can try and get out there and advertise quickly and try and get somebody in place permanently more quickly, or we can take a little bit of time, see what we get, and then after that little bit of time, our interim operator will already be in place and that person can operate until we do hire a full-time person. And that's why I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the interim operator, water operator first and try and decide that, and then we would kind of know where we're going. Then we can decide what we want to look for and advertise, or if you want to advertise it then. It's kind
No
of.
matter what, we need an interim water operator, period.
So let's talk about our options for an interim water operator. As we know, Chad's the only person that currently has a water operator's license for the village, so we would need to have somebody with a water operator license to manage our water system, and the same thing with the County of Winnebago water system. And we do have options, as you know, and Mary, I think we can talk about all of these in open session. So we have one from Fair Graham, our current engineer, that just says that they can do any and all of the above water things. They can manage the system. They have, gentlemen, I think is it Jim Glendenning or Clendenning?
Tom Denny.
Tom Glendenning. Thank you. He works for Fair Graham. He does these for other municipalities. And he originally was the water operator for Rock 39 that the county had. So that would be somebody that we could utilize through Fair Graham. They did send a proposal or accepted, basically setting out what their fees are, their fee structure. And they could provide this until we decided to move on and have somebody else. Seth also mentioned about the street project. He said, he didn't know how involved Jimmy would be, and I said, well, Jimmy and I are going to meet to talk about the street projects and other things, and get Jimmy's feedback on the position too, because Jimmy's been part of the township for a long time, part of the village for a long time, so I want to get his input before we start making huge decisions, on where we're going. And so, we have Fair Graham that we can go to. We also have INSCO Environmental LLC that we can go to. Of course, Chad is the president of that, and Chad's done this for multiple municipalities. I believe Stillman was run by them for a period of time. Was Pecatonica, I think.
We were sub to MDS and Pecatonica.
Okay.
There was the super for Henry Grove, sewer sanitary, Westlake Village as a sub.
Okay. So we have that option where we could go with INSCO Environmental LLC. And, you know, if we're looking at those two, you know, my first thought is I would want to keep, I'd want Chad involved as long as we can. And through INSCO LLC, Environmental LLC, that would allow Chad to stay as our water operator, be on a contract basis rather than an employee basis. And he knows all the systems. Obviously, he knows the village system, been here 14 years, knows the county, been doing that for probably almost as long. And would be, you know, would know everything. He would also be a good help if we still had him on board when we bring in our new public works director, water operator, or whatever, because he would know the system and can then transition over to the new operator. So I would lean towards that. I think, you know, we can look at the cost, but I think this is not comparing apples to apples when you compare Fair Grant to, in one sense, because I think we would probably get more, and this is just my feeling, more feedback and interactivity with Chad's company than we would with Fair Grant. I know they would respond, but I also know that sometimes they seem to be spread a little thin. Seth is usually available, but Seth isn't the person that's the water operator.
So just to clarify, do you have people that work for you, or would it be you, or?
It'd be a mixture, but there are people that work for me that are partners in the LLC. And when we had, City of Byron, we had 7 full-time employees, spread across Rock 39, City of Byron, Westlake, and sewer sanitary. So my brother Dean is the contact, the number one when I'm not available. But the monthly reports can be done at any time. The setting up of the sample schedule by recipient can be done at any time. But one of our operators would be in the mix. Not me all the time, but I would be at the start of the ship all the time.
It would be when licensing.
Yeah, I would be under my license. And that's one of the big things that called the ROIC, responsible operator in charge with the EPA. That's currently me, the bottom recipient with the EPA. It's currently myself. And if the village needs to change that, it can be done. It's just another level or layer of time and management, and it takes time for the EPA to recognize that.
So Chad, just so we know, if you were to do it through INSCO Environmental LLC, you're the water operator, you're the licensed person that would be there. Would we make changes to the IEPA that would be red flag because we're switching over, or you would just keep your name there as the water operator?
My name would stay, that if the contract's entered, it's got to get sent to the EPA so they understand it's under contract instead of employment. And they do have to accept it, but
Right.
means that I'm the opportunity to carry on. It's never been rejected before.
And for those of you that don't know, Dean obviously lives here in Winnebago, a couple houses down from Chad, so he would be another local person. He's also the operator at Stillman Valley, Public Works Director. So again, he's done that for 14 years. And so there would be 2 highly qualified primary people involved. Both have a very built-in interest to make sure that the water system goes well.
What does all this mean for Rock 39? Do they know, and what?
We have Sean here
That's why he's
from the
here.
contract.
Oh, that's what you are, okay.
So the contract, the IGA just says that the village will manage it. It mentions that NDES was the current operator, I believe, at the time, but then it transitioned to the village. So what it would mean for Rock 39 is the village would still operate it. We would contract to our contractor, let's say it's Chad through his company, and they would still monitor the system. So they would be doing the same exact thing that they're doing now with the county. It's just through a contract. And then we would, in the interim, be interviewing people for that position, whether it's just a water operator, whether it's public works director. And then we would, again, be open with the county to say, this is where we are in the process. But until we make that decision for that next employee, my thought is we would continue with Chad as through his company to operate it. Again, he's familiar with it. He operated it before the village operated it, I believe. And then has continued to operate it. And I, not heard any complaints from the county, so I would hope that that would be something that the county would say, we feel pretty comfortable that Chad's going to continue to operate through his company. That would be done.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah, please.
So again, I'm Sean Thunberger. I'm the Assistant County Engineer for Winnebago County, and I'm also in charge of the water system on Rock 39.
Okay.
I've been with the county for 5 years, and I pretty much took the reins from Frank Codino when I started with the county. Been great to work with Chad, relish his experience that he's had. We've had a great, agreement, and it's worked out well for the last 10 years, and hoping to continue it in one way, shape, or another. And, I have the same concerns that I think Frank has shared, that, the advantage for keeping Chad on is very little paperwork has to be submitted to both county health, state health, and the IEPA, because he's already the one that's on our certificates as well as yours.
Sure.
So, that's where if it's somebody else, somebody new, what is our comfort level with that, and what is their experience with the system? So that's kind of why I'm here tonight, too, just kind of getting some information on what you guys are looking at doing, so we know what we need to do moving forward as well.
So to be blunt, what is the rationale if we keep Chad, right? You currently pay the village then pays Chad. Why would you want to stay with us and not just go with into environmental?
Well, and to be honest, that's something that we have. I just found out about this last Wednesday, so I'm, trying to figure out what direction we want to go, and that is certainly a possibility moving forward. Interimly, I believe our contract would still be the 120-day, notice that we'd have to give, because I don't think you guys are looking at this as an emergency where you can't provide us services.
Right.
And, again, it's been a good relationship, and there's infrastructure in place that does make it harder to leave. Our SCADA systems are all set up. There have been things that have been put in place to make it convenient for you to serve us, and that would have to change if it went somewhere else. Honestly, the only reason I could think we would look to leave and maybe go that direction is if you hire somebody new that either doesn't have the certifications, but they're gonna need to get them for you anyways.
Right.
So, and if he's on the short term, we would still be there. Maybe you figure out, or the new hire figures out, what, I don't think it's in the village's best interest to be going over to Rock 39 or staffing wise. So maybe there's a change afoot depending on how you guys split the position up or what you guys do, and that's a conversation I'm sure we'll have at a later date.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Some of the things that echo what Sean said on that, all the assets of the village, or nearly all the assets of the village are also tied into that contract. We have all the special tooling, all the special hand tools, the special flow metering, the fire hydrant diffusers, the know-how of the whole staff.
Right.
That everybody in the game knows how to do certain aspects of it, just the responsible operator in charge, water recipient, and then the uniqueness, to add one more level, the county system's a DPH system. So not everybody has a DPH license. There's Illinois Department of Public Health water license, and there's 4 tiers of IEPA water license. So you do have to jump through a hoop or two. The IEPA, this city water supply, water license supersedes the DPH, but you have to go through and do the training and keep it out, which this is one more level that we have, that I have, but to clarify that Rock 39 doesn't just get Chad, they get all the assets of the village. We put the big investment in the SCADA system, they were able to piggyback on, we continue to stay updated, they pay for their portion to get in, but now they're streamlined and, they're in my pocket and Jim's as well, on the iPhone, the iPad, we can jump in when there's emergencies and outages. Many of the vendors are the same, people know how to work on that system, just like ours. So, and again, our entire staff is cross-trained.
Chad, on a day-to-day basis, when checks need to be done at Rock 39, it's not necessarily you're doing them, it's village staff, and the village staff would continue to do that because there still would be, if we went this route, under your guidance. But, as far as in the short term, again, he doesn't have to mobilize, people that are available because he and his brother have daytime jobs, so the regular staff would continue to do what they've been doing for the last several years.
That's correct.
And like Frank had said, really, you're paying for his knowledge of both systems, really, and that's the integral part of having his licenses and his experience that, because even when we're doing construction out there, I oversee the construction. Chad doesn't spend time out there unless there's a problem or an issue that I want his expertise on. So, that's what I think we're both paying for, with a gentleman like Chad.
And is the agreement that we got yesterday at 4:57 that's marked revised, is that the latest one from INSCO
I
Environmental?
believe so.
Kelly did she caught a couple of grammaticals that I had and a little bit of tab situation that we cleaned up today, so it would have been the one from today.
Okay.
And
It's provided on the display.
The only reason I ask is because unless I missed something, in number 1, it didn't say how much it was going to be per month. But then in number 4, it said in addition to the base monthly sum of $4,000.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was stricken. The in addition to was stricken, the base is $4,000.
Okay, so but in the new one, because they didn't print that for me, because I guess they thought it was the same.
This morning, I think.
The one that we got in all of the documents is the current one, right?
Can we
So
just,
the email you got this afternoon has a correct one.
can we discuss compensation in open session?
We can, or we can go into closed session, it doesn't really matter, I mean,
Because it's public, right?
Right.
So this is $48,000 a year. And the other one, if I did the math right, was 65 from Fairgrant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
depending upon what the,
yeah, he
It's
proposed
open-ended.
more hours and then winnowing down, and it was an hourly charge, right?
Yeah, I went with the starting off with the whatever,
Yeah.
170 an hour with,
It's like $54.40 a month or
Yeah,
something.
that's what I got too.
The hourly outright, I think they averaged at 32 and I was anticipating 37. And there's hit months and there's average months. It all depends on the quarterly sampling requirement and the issues at hand. But in this particular agreement, this one is my mainstay, and it's what we drafted that we presented the county with. It's proposed to be basically a 3-month agreement, to be renegotiated at the end of 3 months. We would do the same. If staff came on board and you did not need a certain level from us, we would waive it. If you needed no level from us, once the 3 months is satisfied, we're willing to accept release. If Penguin Grove had a much higher one because we're doing water and wastewater, but they needed our consultation, so they cut it by a third and we stayed on this consultation only for 3 months. We're very amenable. It's just, there's a pretty significant cost of doing business. The umbrella insurance rider is very significant because the word environmental is in there. But just so everybody knows, ours is not, this is not annual. It would come out as that, but the anticipation is in 3 months, you've either satisfied your need or we can come back to the table.
is your intent with INSCO Environmental to stay on until we find somebody? Or would you be willing to stay on, I'm going to say permanently, but we know when there's a future.
We do open windows for consultation. So yes, the opportunity would remain that we would stay in a consultation. If major projects, capital improvement projects, we typically are very effective with value engineering, value construction, knowing the system we're in, how you can save money and still get the project that you want. It's that fresh set of eyes. We've even been approached by several engineering firms to give that at a different level. So yes, we're open to that. But again, in terms of this contract, they're written the way they are. It's intended to be a 3-month onset to satisfy the immediate need. And if things needed to change, we would be quite amenable to meeting those changes.
And Chad, as to number 4, because apparently the one up there is the most current one. But as to number 4, number 3, about if it's an emergency event, I'm on the 3rd line, the village shall compensate and go at the rate of per hour. It doesn't list a rate.
Yeah.
Do
I
we
didn't
know?
put a rate, it's $150 an hour.
$150.
And a minimum of 2 hours.
Okay.
I thought, I know Chad, you said this is a 90 days, so it looks like it's a minimum 90, but then 90 days notice for either to sever. So it's, you know what I mean? So it's not, if it's after 90 days, it's another 90 days.
Yeah, that's been asked several times, and typically what we've done is we have a letter of severability at the onset of the agreement that says both parties agree the severance should happen at 90 days. So, with some of our larger ones, when they are water and wastewater, we like to carry a little further, but we're not argumentative.
So then we would renew after 90 days,
yes.
we sit down again and, okay.
And this isn't all from there's been several different municipalities that have had legal eyes and hands on this, and they recommended to keep it with that language previously. And I'm not saying that's right, that's just what some of the other customer base has recommended to keep with a letter of severability issued on the day that we sign, if we were to sign. It says we both agree that 90 days from now, we're either renegotiating, extending, or ending. And then you give a notice. I understand it, you do as well. And if anybody's uncomfortable, it probably says final on it somewhere, but it's a draft in my eyes.
Yeah. I think there's also a typo in the second section on section 3, paragraph 5. There is no section 3, paragraph 5. I think you're referencing paragraph 4.
That would be correct. There was wastewater terms in there that I cut out and didn't make the appropriate adjustment.
All right, so we've got, his agreement here. One of the things we can do is we can look at, I would like to have something in place tonight. Now, whether we are authorizing this contract or a contract with very similar terms, but determine, through our attorney and the appropriate party, and then authorize me to sign that final document. And what we've done in the past is when we have a final draft, we can submit it to all the trustees for one final review and basically do a straw poll that if you're comfortable with that, then I would go ahead and sign it. Again, I would recommend that we go with Insco Environmental LLC, number 1, cost, but number 2, familiarity with the system. Number 3, with the employees that are involved in that. I think that gives me a lot more comfort to have both Dean and Chad on board as part of that company. And it'll give us time through that 90 days to find somebody. If we find somebody and that person's ready to go, again, we're still gonna want that company's involvement to help with the transition. So we may have somebody on board in 30 days or 45 days, but we might want that other 45 days for training and understanding. We might want to go longer than 90 days. We don't know how it's going to work. It just depends on the individual that's hired or company that's hired to be the permanent public works director or that position. So I don't know if there's any other type of discussion you want, or if somebody wants to make a motion.
Don't say. But just so everyone's clear that it's 4,000 a month, 3 months, and in an emergency, 150 an hour, right? That we would have to, in order
For a minimum of 2
with
hours.
minimum of 2 hours.
150
For
per
emergency,
hour.
With a minimum of 2 hours.
with a minimum of 2 hours in an emergency. And then $4,000 a month,
In a 90-day
Base.
minimum period.
90-day minimum period.
I will make that motion to sign, to authorize you signing after any
Final
dramatic,
legal review,
yes.
final legal review.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a pending motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion?
Should, to the best of your ability to project between obligations that you may have, with whatever it is that you're doing and your brother, between however it's diced up, if something comes up during the day, you know, one of you is readily available for a consultation or discussion, or, you know.
One of the staff, yes. Currently, there's 3 that are apt, that can answer any questions.
Right. That's a whole list.
With these terms.
And 3-month contract.
Yeah, she's got.
Say that one.
The 3.
If the SCADA system were to go down, you know, a lot of times you probably pull somebody else in on that anyways, but if there, you know, one of the 3 of you that would be always able to coordinate with whomever the vendor is probably working on that.
Yes. Our responses would be much better than theirs. I'm being on staff 24/7 already. We lived the life, and the SCADA has gone down. As a matter of fact, it's, you know, a computer guy, but it's computer based, and we've had to reboot it several times. We're not the only ones. It's a practice that happens, but we're backed up quite well here. We're ghosted at well 3. We have a second hard drive that's on site, and then there's a third hard drive that's up at Strand's office in Milwaukee.
Are we going to put anything in there about provision to the board members, that final contract? Do they have any time frame
I think it's
before that?
just the final version. I think it's just an understanding that we will get it to the trustees before I sign.
Okay, but there's not a commentary period.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't in the motion, and I think the idea is that's how we're gonna do it.
What do you mean a commentary? Where you like,
Well,
It's a 48 hour, you got 48 hours to look at it, do we still agree? If nobody.
so there's gonna be no ability for us to look at it?
No, you will.
Oh.
It's just not it's just not in the motion that
Okay.
it's gonna be required that, you know, you have 48 hours to look at it, blah, blah, blah. You will have time before the agreement is signed. But yes, I would probably look at a 48-hour, 72-hour turnaround. So
And if we don't respond.
for people like me that don't always look at my emails daily, what I would suggest, Kelly, is once we do get something from Mary and a final version, that it get distributed by email immediately upon you receiving it, and then maybe you call or text everybody so that everybody knows to look at their email. And then that way they have an opportunity to respond to, I would say Mary would be the conduit to respond to all questions or concerns to her, and then, you know, we can go over it.
Is that a part of the motion?
No, it's not part, it's just how we're gonna handle it. You don't need
We
a
should make
motion.
part of it, just shoot paragraphs.
We don't need the motion, it's like 3 paragraphs long. It wouldn't be, no, it would not.
Hey, we'll remember what we're doing.
Right. We've got the recording, maybe, you know.
15-minute motion in here.
Right. So any additional discussion on this particular motion? All right, so if there's no further discussion, let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. Ackerman,
Yes.
Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. LaFever,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke.
Yes.
All right, that's approved unanimously. And Sean, you're welcome to stay, you're welcome to leave, whatever your comfort level is, we don't care, it won't hurt our feelings, whatever you want to do. All right, so then, now we need to kind of talk about the position, and, you know, what are we gonna do, how are we gonna fill it? And again, with the advertising. At this point, my thought is we would probably try and fill the position, that same position. Okay, that we would have a public works director, and then, we have Jim as the street and fleets person. And I don't know if we're jumping the gun, because I haven't had a chance to talk to Jim to get his input, and I don't know, Jim, if you have any thoughts. I'm just gonna open up if you have some thoughts about the position,
Not really.
okay.
I think rather than looking at the individual, we need to look at the team.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, the team needs to have the same capabilities that the team had before. It may turn out that your public works director is not the holder of the license. It may be another individual because, maybe the license holder is not interested in being the overall director. He takes care of the water system. He's more of a techie and doesn't want to be dealing with the people and, the projects and everything else. So, if we're fortunate enough to find somebody that's got all those attributes, but yet I think we need to look at the team and, we can start out looking for that is what we would like to see. But, we start getting responses in there that there's highly talented people that carry the license, but, they prefer to be the number 2 man and not the number 1 man. I guess when we start seeing what's out there, we can probably make that decision, but, to me, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, the team possesses the same capabilities as the team has currently.
No, I agree.
Because you're also talking, in addition to the, license, we're also talking, the team as a whole and the fact that their ability to do some of their water, repair and construction projects or whatever. We can't lose sight of that because, certainly, even though the license operator is there, he may not be the same guy that's capable of jumping on a, excavator or something, so until we figure that out, but I just think the team needs to end up with the same thing at the end of the day.
Chad, question for you. How common is it to find directors of public works that also carry the license? Or are they normally, at the places you've seen and talked to, that they're 2 separate people?
It's probably right around 50%. It depends on the size. Once you get above 10,000, there's departments and the separation starts to get broader and broader. So Rockton, the DPW is a license holder. Pecatonica, the DPW is a license holder. Byron, DPW is not the license holder of the ROIC.
When you went right with Winnebago, you were not the director, but you were the license holder, and it evolved into being.
Correct.
So I just say, we just need to look at the.
Yeah.
Correct. Stillman was DPW license holder, but backtrack a little bit on license, there's a lot of license holders that are not capable of being the ROIC, responsible operator in charge. That's another level of reporting and liability that many aren't willing to take. Adam, when he was at Cherry Valley and City of Rockford, they have a stipulation that you have to start getting licenses after you've been on the job. The paradigm has shifted. It's not as easy. If you're a newbie, you have to be operator training for a year. You have to be in the water sector 40 hours a week for a year after the operator training before you're eligible to take the test for license. Testing, Jim and I have talked about it. Testing's not done routinely. It's less now than it ever was. Rockford used to be monthly. Now they can't staff it. Guys that want to become operators got to drive to Springfield if you want to try. There used to not be a cap on trials. Now there's a cap. If you test and fail, eventually you're stopped and you can't come back till the following year. So it's a very difficult role to fill. Jim Johnson could be the director of public works very, very easily. We've talked, very loosely, very recently about opportunity for testing, but that takes time. And then I want to put out here in front of the board that the staff count going down, there's going to be a large burden on that team, very large. We are 24/7. We do work 7 days a week. Somebody's on call every week. So that just went up 33% for the folks that are left behind. So their work burden has gone up. Not being a responsible operator in charge, nobody would know what the tasks are. So it's a tough gambit 3 months down the road or what have you. But there's people out there, like I said, Dan Barber from Pike, he's the DPW and the rank in Brockton, populous 7,500. Over in Pecatonica, Nick is the operator in charge and the DPW, Stone Valley Dean. Iron's a little unique, they hire a contract company. I'm trying to knock him, but they just didn't hit the marks this year. So I don't know, they're actually hiring more DPW staff to help, but
Chad, what's the responsibility of the license holder or the operator in charge in this new environment? We have a water main break at 10 o'clock at night. So, obviously you've got the repair of that, which, the staff may still be capable of taking care of, but, where do they bring in your organization in a situation like that relative to responsibilities relative to that license?
the boil order issuance has to be at the direction of the rank. The boil order sample taking and taking it to the city and the testing of it before it goes to the city's got to be by the rank. And then the rank is also who can receive the lab results and release the boil order if you had to do a shutdown. If you don't have to do a shutdown, it's purely consultation of what's the pressure looking like, what's the chlorine residuals looking like, what's the affected populace looking like, and what's the post event of the boil or of the down, in lieu of shutdown, are we gonna flush at the tail end? And then it's all plays into grabbing samples and checking the water quality. The rank has to make that decision of did it meet the parameters to not go under boil order.
Now, consultation and things of that nature in that scenario, is that inclusive of the monthly fee or does that fall under the emergency services?
It basically depends. The way that we built it, we have a certain amount of time for taking bacteriologicals. We have one event penciled in for the monthly fee, one event. If it goes past one event or there's multiple events, then we turn on the fees.
Yeah, I haven't
We're
had,
done flushing hydrants.
I haven't had a chance to read that document fully yet, or whatever, so some of my questions may be answered when I read that, but I guess, what you're indicating where you've got it budgeted in for, one event, is that stipulated in there?
We will make sure it's stipulated. We'll put that in there, so that way.
Just
we're
make
all on
it,
the same page.
I'm just trying to eliminate any, ambiguity before we ever get there, if at all possible. No matter what we do, we're not gonna cover every single possible scenario, but.
Barring large case scenarios, we're the fairest company that you're ever going to come across.
I'm sure that's probably the case, but again, I think we have an obligation to try to be as transparent on all sides as we possibly can.
There's a 35 point of highlights for immediate needs and constant needs summary that I provided. It's also in that email today. Some of the first 10 will kind of call out those most prioritized items of what the rank would be conducting or be part of. And I have a timeline assigned to that. I could share it with you, but unlike the fair grant proposal, we're not an hourly company. We go the over under. So yeah, that calls out the monthly back tees, which are required each and every month. We have to do 7. So we have to go around and collect 7 from state specified sites within the village.
Any problems in bacterial sites you guys ever had? Like ones that are always like.
Yeah, there's things we don't talk about.
You got your problematic areas once in a while.
Yeah, we have not since the rehabilitated well 2 used to throw problems, but it was pretty much the plumbing. Jim and I redid all the interior plumbing. We actually rehabilitated that well. We haven't had one since. And the law actually changed since you got out of business. If you have one, you used to be able to do a repeat.
Yeah.
That's not allowed anymore. If you have one and it fails, it's a citywide boil order and it's a non-compliance advisory, which was never the case because 90% of the time, if you have one fail, it's the people element, the human handling of the samples. I mean, we're very, very regimented, but I like zero sum factors. We actually have a couple samples we put in that are made of surgical stainless steel to as much eliminate the rust as we can. The bad news is that's outside. If it's raining or drizzling, you can catch bacteria from the environment. So we carry umbrellas. We run the sample stocks for long periods of time. People call here and wonder what we're doing. But that's number one that's it. You gotta do number one really well.
And once I got the opportunity to read through that again, and I skimmed it just real quickly when the email came in, but Deb might answer a few more of my questions.
Can we, I suppose we can do anything. What are our thoughts on, instead of throwing one ad out there hoping for this guy that's gonna fill every one of our needs, we instead put one out, or girl, it's individual. We put one out for just the Director of Public Works to see, and then we could say the licensing is preferred but not required, to see what we get.
And at some point, we're gonna have to think about money then, because you're gonna have to hire two people to do the job of one.
Correct, but
So eventually, I mean, or.
a public, yes, we could just
Or
say the contract.
you
But Public Works
contract
has
that.
been understaffed for years anyway.
I
mean,
don't
we
disagree with you on that.
finally went with the last full-time employee, but that won't necessarily be a bad thing if we have extra people.
I think we had some discussions before about hiring another public works employee. So whether we have an operator and somebody else, we just have to, as Mike said, look at the whole team. What does the team need to continue on, and how many people does it take to make that team?
Well, and I think you've already indicated that you're gonna have a conversation with Jim, and I think that's gonna be a critical element in there to see, what his level of interest is and what his timeline is, and then once you know that, then it gives us a little bit more direction on, okay, this is the way, we may go here, then we go here. If, his opinion is 180 degrees opposite of that, you're gonna, so I think
And that's why I don't know if we want to necessarily move forward tonight with the advertising.
I think you need to get the ball rolling as soon as possible.
There's a couple of thoughts. One is we can start advertising now. We can advertise for Director of Public Works with every single thing that Chad currently does. We want that person to have a water license. We want that person to be able to do the backhoe. We want that person to be out in the field. We can advertise that position and see who responds and try and just fill that position. We could have an option for, we need a water operator and we need a Director of Public Works.
you can actually advertise two positions, and you could, depending on what comes back in, then you start to figure out how you mold it into what we have.
Right. Yes. So we could do that. We could start with that. And again, a conversation with Jim, I think would be very good, just to kind of get his input, kind of see where we're at. I know I can talk to Chad and kind of bounce some ideas off of him. And then we may have some other options, especially with people that would apply. We might be able to look at, different people and say, oh, that person would fill all the positions with one, or this one would be great for this position, but not the other position. So we got to find a great person over here. And then figure out the team of who's going to interview. I mean, depending upon what Jim's going to be doing, I would want Jim to be involved. I maybe would want Seth to be involved, just because Seth knows the background as well. And I did talk to Seth, and he said if we need him to sit down to go through the interviews, he'd be glad to help us out. So that is an option.
Frank, one question on the job description or whatever this was, the ad.
Okay.
It said residency requirements will apply. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I don't know. This is probably taken from somebody else, but I would imagine somebody had a residency requirement. Those are so many miles of the municipality.
I believe we had done our labor and we had said 20 miles.
20 miles, okay, I didn't know if it was 20 or
Well,
25.
the bigger cities at one time, and I know they've laxed them or whatever, if you were gonna be a fireman in Rockford, you're gonna live within the city limits, and, some of those have been real, but that's probably what that would.
I just didn't know what our requirements were because it's a unique position with the license.
Usually when it comes to municipalities, department heads usually put the, they have to make money at their department heads.
Yeah, I back today was January 17th. It's 2 or 3 hours sometimes to get.
So we understand the work.
I'm proposing that we hold off on advertising, because we've got two different options, either a public works and a water, just a catch-all, but until you have that conversation with Jimmy and see where, I mean, we're talking, like, he's not in the room here, we don't discuss this right in front of everybody. And then we can go forward from there, because if he wants to go for the public, director of public works, then we can look for somebody, a regular employee. But until we know that information, we're just spinning the wheels right now.
I think it would be helpful to kind of get some input from there, and then there may be some additional things that I can add after talking with Jim.
Could we go to executive session and get this figured out now? Because I'm thinking the timeline right now, you have 3 months. It's gonna take you 30 days, put an application out there, 30 days to interview, get them all in here to interview, and then approximately 2 to 4 weeks for them to start the position. So you're already pushing that date of September 1st.
So what are you saying, you don't want Chad on after 90 days?
No, I'm just saying we need somebody, we don't have the money to sit here and just, no offense, is to contract out and then we're just spinning our wheels for the next 3 months.
Adam, my only thought is I think it would be a more comfortable conversation for Jim and I just to sit down and go through some of these things. We've had conversations over the last 14 years. I think it might be a little easier. I
understand, I
know Jim's got
I-
a lot that he's getting ready to do, and we really haven't had a chance to figure out the scope of the conversation.
So I get that, and hardly, it's just.
I don't think you guys have had a chance really to absorb Jimmy. I mean, it's not speaking for you to figure out what exactly this role is that we have to fill in, because, right?
Yeah, much of a conversation.
I get you much at all.
Chad and I haven't really even had a good conversation. We've been.
I'm just looking at this whole,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the long term
I get it.
Right.
of stalling when we know potentially we need a good water license operator no matter what.
Well,
So, and we can't, no offense, we can't afford $48,000 a year out of our budget to
Well,
contract.
but
part-time.
we can because we're not paying
Chad.
$100,000 a year.
Correct.
Yeah, you're not paying 100.
We're paying half that. So,
But then your guys are manned out.
and we have no snow plowing to
No
do.
question.
Oh, I hope.
Right, well, if we have snow plowing, it's gonna be an anomaly.
I don't think waiting another week or two to figure
Well, I
out,
just
and
think we
have
could-
conversations with the appropriate people is gonna do us
The
much
other
harm.
thing, Adam, look at the time frame. Chad's gonna be here till May 26th. We have our board meeting the second Monday.
2024, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I haven't signed that contract.
We have our board meeting that second Monday in June. So really, it'll be 2 weeks into, or 2 weeks and a couple of days into that we would have ENSCO Environmental doing this. So we'd still have them for 2.5 months. So I think, Jimmy and I are gonna be talking, you're gonna be back on Thursday. Whether we talk on Friday morning or early next week, but maybe Friday morning would work. We can start that conversation, but again, that'll help me and help us know where we're going. If you guys want to have another special meeting before our board meeting, we're welcome to have it. But what I will try and do is update as we get information as to, what our options are. And then we can decide where we need to advertise. We can do that. I can do that without
Correct.
board authority. So we can advertise it, but I just wanted to have your input. And if we can make a board decision to advertise, great, but technically, we can just go ahead and put the ads out there.
Again, I do have a question that's directed towards Chad and Mary, but, I understand where Adam's going is, maybe part of it is we're looking at this in, 90-day chunks. But, as we find our way through this or whatever, I would have to assume there's a way we work together. We don't deal with one 90-day chunk and then we have another 90-day chunk, because if we realize, 30 days before the end of the 90 days, we could do a continuation of 90, and so it's not always 90, 90, 90.
Yeah, no, if I didn't verse that already.
No,
It's only the original 90.
Right.
And then it
And
says.
then after that,
Monthly.
after that it's monthly.
Okay.
So it's.
There you go. So that way there,
Yeah.
we're not locking ourselves into,
Forever?
No, and that's good. I mean, we want to make sure that we have that opportunity to back out.
I'd like to share something with the board.
Please.
When I interviewed for Stone Valley, this was exactly the situation they were in. And the interview had the request, and I did not have the appropriate licensure. I still interviewed. They chose to keep the contract operations in place until I licensed up. They saw me as the valid candidate, and they didn't run me on the route. Now, when my brother and I decided, one of us was exiting Stone Valley, most part was interviewing. I had the licensure that was appropriate. They interviewed me as a convenience. He did not, and they did run him out of the room. But I would say, I'm not siding with anybody at all, but it's okay to ask for it. And if you were to have a candidate get in front of you that was a good candidate, that was eager to A, take on a role, or honest and say, B, I want this 95% of the role, but that's not me. I mean, that would allow you time. It's, I don't know legally how that works out, but I will say personally, 20 years ago, I interviewed with Stone Valley. They needed I had the appropriate water license, but I didn't have mine. Luckily we don't have sewer anymore because it's like Boy Scouts. You have to be at a sewer plant for 8 years. You can't even test. Water is now about 2 years for the C license. But wastewater is 4, 6, and 8. So if you're not old enough, you can't be that guy. But I just wanted to share with the board that when I first interviewed, I did not hold the license, but I held, there's something to be said, I held licensure. That meant I was game for taking the test and studying and getting after it. But they extended the contract with the contract operator until such point. And it was immediate. The day I got the license, they ended the contract. And again, we're very amenable. If something like that happened, we're not in block chunks. Once we pass that first 90 days, we would even prorate. If it's the 15th of the month and you're satisfied with the hire, we will gladly, meet your needs.
And thank you for letting us know that, because it does give us some idea of who to look for, and we don't have to discount somebody just because they're not currently licensed appropriately for water, that we can still utilize your services until we get that person the correct licensure for that.
What about the scope of the advertisement? Are we gonna have any discussion about that? Once you talk to Jimmy and it's decided, okay, this is what we're going to advertise for, maybe we should know what the extent of the board thinks in terms of how much are we going to advertise and where?
Right. So again, we've got these particular places that we could run an ad. Obviously, you want to try and get to the biggest audience you can that would come to a village, this size. And I don't know if it's going to be APWA, AWWA, or doesn't sound like GovHR is going to be probably the one that's going to pull the most. Or, how else you get it out there.
But, yeah, until we know what we're advertising, I think that's a moot point.
Well, but
Because we will need to find that stuff out, but until then, because if it ends up being just, if we need the water guy, you're gonna want to use the water advertisements. But if you just want a public works guy, you can use this avenue.
I mean, we're talking about $1,000 in advertising, so, have your conversation and I think use your judgment and let's get the ads out now going out there. I don't know that it's a motion or a lengthy meeting, is it?
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't hindered by that.
And the website correction.
I would direct people there for that. I was gonna answer.
I think we use Chad's guidance on where he thinks the best reach for whatever,
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely, whatever we said advertising.
Or better get a list from Chad on who we should be talking to.
Well, I already have.
Right, Chad?
I already have some names, and that's why, after talking to Jim, we're gonna talk about the whole situation and individual people, and that's why I wanna kind of circle back after that, because there may be certain people that could fill certain roles, and just need to know how that might work, so. All right, any other discussion regarding the interim water operator or the public works director position? If you don't have any more discussion,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
there's a second. All right. Sally, did you have a comment?
Well, I was trying to read the agreement really fast. I just wondered if it's identified in the agreement how INSCO services will bill us, or is it invoicing?
Yeah, we will invoice.
So-
Set that table. Payment to the city, additional services.
Is it billed prior to the work? Okay. Because if it wasn't in the agreement, I was going to ask Mary if she could identify that.
We're not doing it.
We do need.
We've never had an agreement not be read.
It's just easier if I know whether I'm getting invoiced or whether I have to remember to pay.
But it's billed in the month for the next one, or, is that right? Billed in advance?
Bill in advance, to be paid on the 15th of the month of services and services.
Insurance.
All right, so we've got a pending motion to adjourn. We have a first, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are concluded. Let me
See you
stop the
down the line.
recording.